time, I had no idea the challenge and the talent it takes to do that really well every day to meet every customer's needs.
What does IFDA mean for you, and why did you choose to get so involved?
That we come together really to ensure that our industry is marketed well, that the people in Washington who are making decisions that affect our industry have an idea of what the business is.
This would be my call to action to listeners to say, how can you make the IFDA community stronger, for instance, and what can you do?
That there is a future there, and they want you to be the best leader you can be, and we need to live up to that. Getting back to that head and heart, if you can address both of those, then you can be successful.
Welcome to Crave, the IFDA Podcast. My name is Julien LeBlanc, your host for this series of great conversations with industry and non-industry leaders. The food industry is evolving rapidly, and so are its leadership challenges. Our mission with this IFDA Podcast is to help you stay ahead of the curve with fresh leadership insights and strategies. Before we dive in to our exciting conversation, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Cut+Dry, our sponsor for Crave. Cut+Dry is the nation's leading e-commerce platform offering the seamless ability for distributors and their partner manufacturers to promote and sell more cases with our best-in-class operator user experience. Well, I must say, listeners, I'm super excited for this conversation. And before every podcast, I do a pre-call, and I must say, after our pre-call, I thought we should have just recorded it and released it. And I think, folks, you're going to see why I'm so excited about this conversation. My special guest today is Susan Adzick, president of McLane Foodservice and vice chair of IFDA. Susan, welcome to Crave.
Well, thank you so much. That's a great welcome, and I enjoyed our conversation yesterday very much. You were so easy to talk to, and of course, talking about the industry is one of my favorite things to do. So this worked out great. I am Susan Adzick. I've been in this industry for probably the food service distribution about 25 years. I've done a lot of different roles leading up to this one, from in operations and sales and marketing.
That's a mouthful.
That was a mouthful. I remember walking into my first distribution center. It was with PepsiCo. And I did the tour and I walked around and I said, okay, what else do you do here but bring cases in and out? And at that time, I had no idea the challenge and the talent it takes to do that really well every day to meet every customer's needs. So that was my beginning. And I can tell you, I love this industry really for a couple reasons. One being the people. And when I say that, I mean the people I get to work with every day in my business, and suppliers and customers, the industry, both the distribution industry and the restaurant industry. And I would say, probably because the people that come into this industry have opportunity and impact. It doesn't matter really what your background is. If you have grit and perseverance, if you can get results, if you are willing to innovate, if you are really dedicated and focused, you can be successful and you can have an impact anywhere in the business. And I think that that's what's exciting to people, and it is what attractive to them. So we have great people. I love that part. I love that it's challenging every day. I mean, you have to be on your game every single day, have excellence every day. It's very high touch, low margin, a very high customer touch, very low margin. And that part's exciting. And I think just to finish out the idea of the people part of it, it would really be about the customers. I have terrific customers. Many of them are franchisees, families who've been in the business 1, 2, and 3 generations. They have a little bit different outlook than other businesses because they've got so much skin in the game. They look for strategic partners. They're looking for growth. They're looking for ways to get better. They're great partners.
I love that you can tell you've got a lot of passion for people. And, I really want to anchor this conversation because this is all about leadership insights so we can help our listeners, whether you're newer in your career, whether you're in the middle of your career, or whether you're sitting in the seat that you're sitting in and you're just looking for insights and you're looking for ways to challenge. But before we go to really change, because I want to talk about change today, we're going to anchor on change in leadership. I want you to tell me a little bit about the IFDA community, because I know you love to give back and you love to brainstorm with your peers. So maybe tell me a little bit about what does IFDA mean for you and why did you choose to get so involved?
So I would share with you that I think that the way that for me, the way that I learn, and I like to keep learning all the time, is to be with groups of different people who have spend their day differently than I do, focus on different things. And then also the groups of people that focus on similar things so that we can talk about where the real challenges we have for this industry. We're all facing a lot of the same challenges and, just in attracting drivers. That's a key element that makes us successful, makes or breaks us. How do we do that better together? How do we deliver the message that I just shared with you about what I love about this business? How do we do that as an industry so that everybody knows? You can have any background. You can have an HR background. You can have a legal background, marketing background, or no formal education, and you can succeed here. And you can do almost any job you would like to do, provided that you are focused on it, committed to it, and show some results and some passion for what you're doing. So that we come together really to ensure that our industry is marketed well, that the people in Washington who are making decisions that affect our industry have an idea of what the business is, how it works. It's interesting to me how few people understand food service distribution or even supply chain. Coming out of COVID, people are familiar with the name supply chain, but just exactly what we do in bringing, food into restaurants, there's very little understanding. And I was similarly situated before I came into this role of understanding all that it takes to do that, all of the complexity that it takes for doing it well. And so I think we come together as a group to ensure that we're well understood, from opportunity for people to join us, from the legislatures who are going to make decisions that are going to have an impact on us.
It is, as you know, it's not easy sometimes to, I'm going to use the word elevator pitch, but condense a message in a way that people understand, hey, this is why we do what we do at IFDA. And what I always say with associations, and I'll use IFDA since this is what we're talking about, is you only get out of the association as much as you put in, though. And this would be my call to action to listeners to say, how can you make the IFDA community stronger, for instance? And what can you do?
Before we got on, I was doing a call, one of about 6 that I will do, with the drivers that we have that we are inducting into the IFDA Hall of Fame. And every company will have the chance to put forward their drivers that have 25 years of safe driving, committed to and taking care of customers, haven't had a moving violation in the last 5 years. And they're professional drivers. They are the industrial athletes of our business and our industry. And it is so wonderful to be there at this event and have all of our industry partners there and have our drivers that are making a difference. They're the face of our businesses. And that's one element of IFDA that I really love. It gives me a chance to celebrate some of the teammates that on a bigger stage than just in the stage that I can give them.
I'm going to ask you to double click on something you just said there, because words matter. Industrial athletes. I think that's an amazing way, because if I look at someone as someone that, let's say, drives a truck versus an industrial athlete, I'm going to look at that function differently. Suddenly, I don't know, I might have Gatorade for them when it's hot in the summer. And I'm assuming a lot of people that work for you were probably athletes at one point as well. Would that be a fair statement, that people that are picking and some of the truck drivers? And
well, it is both in the drivers that we have and in the warehouses. Right. I mean, I will walk around the warehouse and talk to the teammates we have there. That's where the energy is in this business. And I love doing that. And when I say, what do you do when you're not here? And how do you keep so fit? And they'll say, I keep fit by doing this job. This is a job that keeps me fit. Making sure that every teammate understands how key they are to making this business successful is important in all of our businesses in the industry. And, we do some, what we call Rodeos, where we have the warehouse people and the drivers that compete. Those are all things that help our teammates understand how valued they are, how really their work when they do it well is exceptional, and that we really call out the best of the best.
Look, I love it. I mean, obviously we have most of our listeners here are within the industry, but there are also listeners that are not in from our industry. And sometimes, as we talked about, you can learn from other industries. I think there's an amazing insight for folks listening here, which is, hey, you are leading industrial athletes. You are, creating the conditions and the environment for them to be the best version of themselves. And then you're celebrating them by having these competition. Like that is something that is really a very interesting insight for me. So
there isn't anybody who works really hard who doesn't want to be recognized for what they're doing. You just, all of us want, I'm always so taken back when someone takes the time, a teammate, and sends me a note and tells me something that they appreciate that I've done. When you realize that it matters to people, it just gives you more encouragement to want to do more. And I think everybody feels that way. So.
Well, I was sharing with a group last week. I have a shoebox with, some of the tickets of concerts and I don't know, sporting events I've seen. And I was looking at my McLane days, my 15 years, an amazing company still to this day, a lot of friends there. And I have one memento from my McLane days, and it's a handwritten note from our CEO at the time when I was in my late 20s, because it meant so much to me, Susan.
I like to write notes. That's been instilled with me from my mother, of the impact of it. So I still do handwritten notes. I ask people to tell me about the outstanding teammates they have in their center or in their department so that I can send a note to them. Sometimes when I walk around, I will see those notes, pinned in their office. And it's meaningful to me that they recognize how important I value them. And, when I'm in the warehouse, I always like to say, when you're in the freezer and you're the only person on that aisle, I want you to know how much we appreciate what you're doing and that you're making a difference even when you're all by yourself in there, because you're what makes a difference to our customer.
Well, look, I think, first of all, thank you for sharing some thoughts around the importance of really valuing your people and celebrating your people. And I think that's a great jumping off point to, I really want to talk about change. And in order to lead change, my belief from everything I've read around change is humans don't like change as a starting point. But if they're well led and if there's trust that's built, like you feel valued, suddenly you might say, you know what, Susan, I'm up for this. I trust you. I trust the leadership team. Let's do it. So let's start maybe with defining change for you as a leader, because when you talked briefly at the start of our conversation around your journey, that's a lot of change. I mean, you are leading change. If someone said, what do? You're in the business of change is how I would probably define what you do, Susan. So what does leading change mean to you as a leader? Let's start there.
Well, I'll start with what's sort of the obvious for me is that McLane is 131 years old. We have been successful over all of that time. We've changed, we've pivoted, we've done a lot of things differently, all to make sure that we're changing with the times. We continue to meet our customers' needs. We continue to grow. But one thing hasn't changed, and those are our principles. That's our foundation. So that's the first and foremost thing. When we look at change, we make sure we never sacrifice that. We never jeopardize that. So that's the first element of it. And then along with that comes exactly what you were saying, the trust part. Once you build trust and people realize that we're moving in a direction that's going to make the business better, or it's going to be a situation that's going to be better for teammates, or it's going to be a situation that's better for customers, and you help people to understand that, and they already trust you, that's a long ways to being successful with it. Here's the hard part. Here's the part that I think that is difficult. You can often explain what you're trying to accomplish, giving that clarity of vision and the plan against it. And you can show the business case for it, why it works in a spreadsheet, why it works on paper. And everybody nods and say, yeah, I get it intellectually. It makes sense. And as long as it's happening to some other group that they can see, it's easy. Once it hits home and it's you, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And it just means that we have to make sure that we are attuned to what impacts a person's self-being, so both their head and their heart.
I love head and heart. You mentioned that in our pre-call, and I never heard it framed up that way. And it is true. I mean, I think at the end of the day, even if the change is well understood and you know there's going to be benefits, you then go to that feeling place. And if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't matter if all the facts and figures are there. You're almost going to find a reason that as soon as one little detail goes wrong, right?
That's right. And that's such a great comment because, I can give you a lot of different examples of change where that's come into effect. you really have to get everybody on board.
Right.
Because it only takes one person not being on board that can really make the change either difficult or unsuccessful. And so spending the time to do that, understanding it, and making sure you're changing with people and not to people makes a big difference.
It's interesting. One of the concepts that I've really leaned into is this concept of retellability when delivering a message. And what I challenge leadership teams is to say, okay, it sounds that your message is crystal clear on why we're, I don't know, changing our ERP or why we bought this company. And if we were to go outside the room and listen to two other people talk about the change, how would they describe the change? Because it's irrelevant how we see it in the boardroom. What do you hear when I kind of share that thought or that insight?
So when you look at the message you're giving the same group, and I'll think to myself, I've already done this. I've had this message. I've said it this way. I've said it 5 times, 6 times. You have to do it 12, 20 times, the message, and explain it, because everybody hears it from their perspective the first time they walk in. They start to hear a little bit more the next time you say it. They start to put it together a little bit differently. So that repetition of the vision, the clarity of it, and the plan and how we're going to get there and why it matters, or what happens if we don't do it, that repetition becomes really important. And then you got to test it. You know, did I say what I thought I said? Did I miss anything? How did you hear that? How can I do it differently?
I love what you said about what happens if we don't do it. It just reminds me, I was on a plane ride recently, and I don't know about you, Susan, but I'm an extrovert. I love to talk to people, but on the plane, I put my headphones and I lock in on my book. It's my space. But, you know, we were stuck, I don't know, at Newark for an hour. So suddenly you start doing small chit chat. I said, what do you do? And she said, I'm a consultant and I specialize in risk management. And then she paused. The way she said it was she had her elevator pitch down and she looked at me with a smile. She said, and I don't focus on the boring stuff, Julien. I believe that risk is when you don't do something. So I help organizations actually get out of their own way, because that is risky if you don't change. And I just thought it was a different framing, if you want, of change.
So let me give you a very personal example of change, that both impacted me and required a different kind of leadership from me. About 3 years ago, we made a decision at McLane Company that we would leverage the assets across the entire company. We have essentially 2 major businesses, mine that we do restaurants, and the other side we call retail, that does convenience stores, big box retailers.
Got it.
And we operated totally separate networks, totally separate workforces, totally separate capabilities, everything, to the fact that I really knew very few people over there. And we made the decision that really, for us to be able to create the capacity for our current and future customers, for us to be able to really grow and to be efficient, would be to leverage all those resources, leverage all those distribution centers. I've got 45 of them. If I leverage them against what the retail side have, then we have 80 distribution centers. So, okay, so that is the piece, that's the piece that I mentioned earlier. That all makes sense, right? You can't argue with it. That's scaling, that's leverage and everything. And then I realized that my job was 100% focused on building this business. And all of a sudden, I had a high percentage of it still focused on that, but I had another percentage that's focused on the entire company and how we're going to change that. We're going to do processes the same way. Who's going to change? How are we going to get to how we're going to change? How much of it's in common? How much of it is unique and different? Whole different perspective that we had to think about, that I had to change my thinking on what we do. And it wasn't just maximizing the value of this business, but it was creating the synergies across the whole company. So a lot of change.
I love that. I was with a client recently, and they were talking in a similar vein, and they used a term where they said, common when possible, customize when it counts. And I really liked that, which was, hey, where we can find synergies, let's not, I don't know if this is the right paper, let's keep this paper. And if we need to translate it in Spanish, let's translate in Spanish. If it needs to be in French and English. And I really like that, because I find sometimes with change, though, the risk is we all want to do our own thing. And it's almost like we don't want to take advantage of these natural synergies or center of excellence. And I'm sure you experienced that a little bit too as you were navigating that change. Yeah.
A lot. It's very hard to break away from the way we've always done it, that we think is unique because it's the way we've always done it, versus it's unique because it provides us some form of differentiation in how we service the customer. That's what we need to protect and keep as unique. Almost everything else comes out on the side of being common. And it may mean we don't do it either way that either businesses do, but a better, newer way. But it's still hard.
Still hard. And I think it was Marshall Goldsmith or one of his books where it was, what got you here might not get you there. And that alone, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. And yeah, no, go ahead, Susan.
Well, I was just going to say, and sometimes necessity drives change.
Yes.
And it makes it less likely that someone's going to opt out because they see the necessity of it is so important. And the best example I can give of that one is that we've added a lot of new business in the last 8 to 10 months and have probably done dozens of transitions before. And during this time to prepare for all of that. And at a leadership meeting, you think about, how do I recognize when it took so many people to do that? How do I recognize everyone? What it takes to do that is that everybody has to play the game. Everybody has to be in how they do it. And we had a leadership meeting. I had all the my distribution leaders there, all the support teams, the leaders of that there. And I asked the group, I said, if you lead a distribution center that had a business transition, please stand. And then I said, if you have a distribution center that you gave resources to one that had a transition, please stand. And if you had people that were dedicated from a support standpoint for these transitions, please stand. There wasn't anybody left seated.
Right.
It's because it takes everybody. And it was a necessity to do it. Everybody knew how important it was and exciting it was, but it still was a lot of change.
Have you found over the years, as you've led change, so what I tend to see with leaders or organizations that are really good at I'm not even going to say the word drive change, but leading change and really getting people to see the benefits and buy in and be part of the solution is, it's easy to change when something's broken or you have no choice. Like, we have no choice. That's why in many weird ways, I don't want to go back to COVID, but man, we got creative in a lot of ways, didn't we?
Oh, we did.
Amazing. Right? We proved that stuff that would take 2 years, we're able to do in a month or 2 months and all that kind of stuff. And then I see other organizations that are so world-class, and I'm sure there's moments on your team like, we're going to change because we want to do this. We know it's the right thing, even though what we're doing now is working, but it's not going to set us up for the next 12 months. And then you have a lot of organizations that kind of sit in the middle. And they're, they don't want to lead change, and they don't want to change unless they're completely broken and there's no way of doing it. Are there tools, things you've done, ideas you've done to help people change when you're already succeeding, but you are now preparing the organization to future-proof itself, to be ready for the year after or 2 years? Because that's hard. That's really hard to do.
So that's really around strategy. I think if you do a good job with your strategy and you prepare where you're strong, where you're weak, where your competitors are, and you take a look at that and you say, we're winning today. And these are all the reasons we're winning. I mean, we may have some weak points over here and we can work to overcome those, but these are the reasons that we're winning. The question is, are we going to win in 3 years? Are we going to win in 5 years? Are we going to change and improve and get better than our competition does over the next 3 to 5 years? And if we don't, what does that do to us? What does it do to when you walk on that distribution center floor and the first 3 people you talk to all have 5 kids, and this job's important to the future of their family? The decisions that you make that you want to grow the business. So you think about it from where we are and what we do really well. Okay, can we leverage that? Can we take what we do really well and then put it in a channel that's parallel to that to grow our business that way? And then what's the consequences of if we don't grow? And how do we differentiate? I mean, we may be ahead right now, but if we're not moving forward and figuring out how I differentiate for my customers, how I make it more important for them to want to do business with me, that they think that being with me for the next 3 to 5 years is the best chance they have of growing their business, that's what we need to work on. So I think that really drives the change. And it tells you at least how much you need to think about doing.
Well, Susan, I've talked to a lot of leaders over the years asking these questions. And again, I'll go back to her pre-call because it was so impactful on me, is I could feel the love that you had for your customers, the love that you have for your team, the people that work for you, that work with you, your team. And I love that you mentioned the word clarity, principles, and trust, because if you've got clarity of where the business needs to go in order to continue to really serve the customer at the highest level, you have principles that you're going to adhere to because that's how you treat each other, treat others, and behave. Well, then there's trust that they're going to say, okay, like, let's go do this. Let's go do this. Let's follow the path of what the strategy is saying we should do as an organization.
Sometimes it's as easy as clarity of vision and empowerment. I mean, I can give you a great example of an emergency situation we've had with a potential customer who came to us and said their distributor was closing imminently, and they had just weeks to transition over and came to us and said, can you help us?
Wow.
And so I brought a small team into my office, and they weren't even the senior level. It was like the next level. And I said, here's the challenge. They've asked us to do this. It's something that we would take months to do. And we have to decide, can we do it? And what does that mean? So that 452 point list that you use to do transition, it's out the door. You're going to have to think differently about it. You're going to have to say, where are the trade-offs? And I'm going to share with you the one caveat is you can't impact our current customers. So if you can do this, not impact the current customers, that's the vision, do it. And amazingly, they did it. And of course I said, oh, if we could do it like that, maybe we could do it more like that. They said, oh, no. You know, we don't want to do everything that fast.
Well, it's interesting because my old tennis coach used to always quote Billie Jean's famous quote, which is pressure is a privilege. Talk about pressure for your team. And you are representing the McLane logo and this rich history. So yes, you're going to go off a bit, but you can't, it still needs to be a success at the end of the day. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it was exciting. The people who were involved with it felt the pressure of it, but they also felt the excitement of it. And they were really proud of coming through that and being able to accomplish it.
And that would be an example. Imagine if, I don't know, there was data following these people that were on this project and their productivity and how engaged they were after that project. It would have went through the roof because the pride swells up. If we can do that, we can do anything.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that so often in this business that it is very challenging. It is very hard work from the warehouse teammate to the driver, all the way up in the organization, that I think that when we're successful, it just feels so good. And there's so many different ways that everybody along the way knows that they've contributed to that success, and it feels great.
And so we've talked about so great examples. We're starting to get the ingredients, if you want, of how do you lead change? What does change look like? Are there any watch outs or, I don't know, maybe you were part of a project without naming names or even the actual project, you say, wow, I know why that initiative didn't go as well because, I don't know, we didn't sell the why properly up front. So when it got tough, people weren't gritty and we didn't get the right people on board. Like, is there any watch outs, I guess, if you were teaching change to other leaders listening to this?
I think the biggest point that I've made, and certainly a learning with the failure that we encountered, was two elements. One, making sure you've got the right people there.
Yep.
Very key. But not only that, they have to feel comfortable providing their perspective and their expertise. It's not enough for them to be at the table. They need to know that we have to be able to understand their experience and how this could be successful and how this could be unsuccessful. And if at any moment they feel that they are being not valued for what they're contributing, or they don't feel comfortable putting forth their ideas, then we've lost all that. Yeah. We've lost that perspective. And that's how I think that you can lose in change. You've got to have the right people feeling comfortable that their perspective is needed and valued.
And look, part of it too is I'll use a buzzword here, but psychological safety, that if I'm on this team, that I have the confidence that if I think I'm spotting something that, from my experience, that's not going to go right, that I can share it and I'm not going to be, I don't know, made fun of or whatever, or picked on in the meeting. And yeah.
Very early in my career was when I first came to PepsiCo. The HR person, her name was Kathy Cooney, who onboarded me. I was 3 days into the job, and I came in as an operator, and they were making major changes, and they were going into meeting, and they were changing everything. And after the first break, she came over to me and she said, do you have thoughts on this? And I said, I've been here 10 minutes. I mean, these people have probably been here for years. And she said, if you have thoughts, we're paying you for your perspective. You need to talk. And I have used that 100 or 1,000 times when I've got someone in the room who's not contributing. I'll maybe pull them aside and say, your perspective is really valuable. That's why you're here. I need to hear your perspective. And sometimes somebody asking it and saying we need to hear it gives you more courage to put forth your ideas.
What's interesting too is I think as a leader, I mentioned psychological safety. I think we have to create the conditions and the environment for people to want to be fully engaged and own this change. And I'll give you a little exercise that Jill on my team loves to do, and I love it, is, a lot of us have done post-mortems after a project, right? But she loves to do a pre-mortem. So before we launch it, what are all the things that could go wrong in this? What does success look like? And she says it's amazing because we're doing the pre-mortem, even the person that's been there a day, you've given him permission to kind of put points on the board. So it's just a little bit of a hack, if you want, in that meeting. Yeah.
The more we can figure out how to empower the group that we have that are, for the most part, they have experience, they've seen everything. I mean, the closest to the work you get, the better chance you have of improving it.
Totally. I was talking about change with someone recently, and I was talking about the change curve, and you've seen different models, I'm sure, but I'm going to oversimplify it. And it was 20-60-20, which was, if I was trying to implement change and I had 10 people on my team, really, I only need to grab 2 people. Because those 2 people are going to be the trailblazers. They're the ones having the water cooler conversation, being able to retell. They're going to grab the 6 that sit in the middle a bit, because if it works for you, Susan and Julien, I'm in. And then the bottom 20 that kind of only come in kicking and screaming at the end, if their livelihood depends on it, right? But I thought it was an interesting way to lead changes. Of course, you want to grab all the hearts and minds, and who's the people that you are going to need to be that person that's going to advocate and have those courageous conversations when you're not in the room as the leader of change? Yeah.
And it's the other people in the room that are trusted too. Other leaders that you have that people trust.
Totally.
I've always heard that a little differently. You need the critical mass. And once you get the critical mass, then you drag along those other maybe 20%, but you need that critical mass to move forward. You need to have those people believing, understanding, and committing to it.
Yeah, and I think, again, what I like about these conversations is, that's why there's 50,000 plus books on leadership. I think it's an art form that has a little bit of scientific components to it, or we try to bring science, is you're right that it's how do you build a critical mass, I think could be the discussion of, do you need 20%? Do you need 40? I'd love to dig into that, but that's another podcast for another day for you and I. What about, so again, I know that you have a growth mindset, you have a beginner's mindset, probably in a lot of times, even though you've done this for a bunch of years. Do you have mentors? Do you have people that you lean on? Maybe it's colleagues, maybe it's people outside the industry. Tell me a little bit about how you go get your leadership change confidence. There you go. I just made up that, but leadership confidence when it comes to change.
So I do. I've been fortunate all my life to have mentors who maybe were there a moment in time or maybe longer. Now I have a group that we call each other our personal boards, and we've probably known each other for probably 15 years, and all in very senior level positions, all in different industries. So I'm pretty sure somebody on this team has experienced something I'm going through that I can talk to. And they don't know the people, and they don't need to, but they know the circumstances and can say, how would you handle this? Or what else should I be thinking about? And they're very helpful at providing that kind of information and help. But I'll also say, sitting around the table at IFDA, when you hear people talk about things that they're preparing for, that's a learning opportunity. Sitting around the table at the NRA, and you'd think that running restaurants, they would be so different. They're not. They face a lot of the same issues and challenges we do. So I learned from that as well. Every time I can get with a different group of people, I tend to learn something that's valuable to me. And then along the lines of mentors, the one that I think that plays in almost day to day in my mind is early on. I was exposed to Dr. Deming. And the one thing that he said that sticks with me all the time is you can never not lead. So that means that everything you do, every event you go to, every meeting that you're in, every time you're in front of a group, everything, you're still the leader. And that team looks at you as the leader. and they want you to be good. They want to know that they have put their careers really in your hands, that there is a future there, and they want you to be the best leader you can be, and we need to live up to that.
Being a leader is a privilege, and I read a book recently. I love the title. It was by Robin Sharma. He's a Canadian, and his book was called Leader with No Title, because his belief was we're all leaders. It doesn't matter. And funny enough, a lot of times the impact comes from the person that doesn't have the director, the president, the VP title, because they're very passionate or they're the subject matter expert in that particular area of change, for instance.
I think that's probably one of the challenges with being the role that I play within this business, is that I don't want to come into a meeting and make all the decisions. I want to hear what everybody else is thinking. And so a lot of times I hold back and don't talk or don't weigh in on a decision so that I can hear everybody else, because sometimes when you weigh in, stops everything else. So that's something. Now my team now is they're so used to be that they're, we really have a very challenging environment all the time in a positive way, with everyone feels very comfortable, saying anything that they need to say. But in other groups, that's often what I will do, is just hold back.
Susan, what's hard to do sometimes is take a step back, especially when you've done all these various roles. I mean, you've got an engineering mindset, you've got a sales and marketing mindset, you've got an operational excellence mindset. And I'm sure there's a lot of times that you could just step in and say, look, we could probably just do this and it would work. And you're not preparing them to think critically on their own or own the change. So I'm sure over the years, you've probably gotten better at just kind of being a passenger from time to time.
That's such a great point. I can think of them, one of the roles that I had with the responsible for all the customers in VP of sales and marketing and national accounts. I have a very strong person doing that now. And it was very hard in the beginning not to always say the way things should be done. But I think he's doing things better than I did it. I think he's got really interesting ideas and he approaches it differently. And so I really stand back and say, go for it, because it's terrific. It's terrific to watch. It's terrific not to have to put a hand in there. Every place you don't have to put a hand in to control gives you all this latitude to do all the other things that you need to do and be thinking about, and all the strategy and all those big things like that. So I love that piece.
And look, I can't believe we're winding down this conversation. And I know that you had prepared some stories, some thoughts around certain things, because obviously I gave you a framework, no different than I would with any conversation. Is there something else on your mind, something we didn't cover that you're very passionate about as it relates to change, that you'd like to offer up here as maybe a kind of a final thought before we start winding this down?
So I think that there is a level of excitement that comes with change. And as leaders, we really need to help our organizations be a part of that, to understand it. As scary as it can be when it really is in your sandbox and you're the one that is going to have to do something different and maybe have a different reporting relationship or have a different people reporting to you. And that's where we really need to lean in and help people see, if we can get past this, what does it really look like? And why is it so much better? And so that's what I would say is really getting back to that head and heart. If you can address both of those, then you can be successful with change.
If you only had a t-shirt right now instead of a beautiful blazer, and you can only have one word to describe who you are as a leader, and I'm not saying you're that person every day. I mean, look, we're humans. There's days you're probably a better leader of change than others. What word would you choose, and why would you choose that word?
So I guess if I had to describe my leadership style, it would be that I like to win, and I like the people around me to win. And I like to do what I need to do to help people be successful, to help them understand their natural talents, which I find that oftentimes people don't value those as much as they should because they're so powerful. And then also it's my job to open up the possibilities for them to see then what they can accomplish and what we can accomplish as a business. So if I roll that all together, then what I would say would be coach. I think that's what I do. I coach. I think that's what I do is I coach the people. I coach the organization. I'm here for what they need. Push when pushing is necessary to rave about what they've done, to thank them, to recognize them, so that together we all win.
Well, look, I mean, first of all, what a beautiful summary. So I think I would allow you to have this t-shirt that would say, Coach, or even we could maybe have a little icon of a whistle or something. You don't even need to wear the right coach. And then in the back of your t-shirt, together we win.
Oh, I love that. Together we win. That's
Together we
exactly
win.
right.
It's great for the two of us to have this awesome conversation, but to all our listeners that are actually taking the time, whether you're listening to this in your car, whether you're looking at it on YouTube, whether you're sharing it with your team, because I think these are good thought starters for conversations so you can get confidence around change. I'm going to congratulate all of you for investing time, energy, and effort. And with that said, thank our sponsor one more time, Cut+Dry. Thank you, Susan. And with that said, I'm going to say, let's go get them. Let's go lean into change.
This episode is brought to you by Cut+Dry, the only independently verified digital ordering platform that combines e-commerce, payments, and sales tools to help food service distributors sell over 10% more cases within a year. Here's the truth. E-commerce isn't just about going digital. It's about getting discovered. That's why, since 2009, Cut+Dry has led the industry in transforming your inventory into online custom apps that are easy to search, explore, and for your customers to uncover new products. Join us today at cutanddry.com.